Hey, welcome to Garry's Shortlist. Today we're going to have a chat with James Kell from Kell Rigby Builders. James and I had a great chat about risk, positive incentive, some of the challenges and the approaches in the construction industry around reward. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it. It was really nice to catch up with James. So welcome, James. Thanks for your time this morning, and it's been a long while since we've worked together.
Yeah,
although it doesn't seem that long ago in some respects for me. But maybe you can share with the listeners today a little bit about our history together and where we kicked off, and
sure.
Then we might get into some of the stuff around risk and risk and reward, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, so I ran Kell Rigby for 9 years, from 2003 to 2012. And, I mean, talk about risk, that was risk manifested was the way to describe Kell Rigby in 2012. And you and I, my recollection may be different to yours. You were working on one of our jobs and wanted to get into safety. And we had a discussion, and I was like, well, we needed someone in safety at the time. And you were like, yeah, let's have a go.
I was the only idiot that put my hand up.
Only idiot that put the hand up. And it was just the start of really good relationship. And we were always throwing ideas at each other. And one of them was what happened at Apple, right?
Absolutely. We'll come back to the Apple thing, but that was my recollection as well, is that I was on the job one day and someone said, hey, James Kell wants to see you in the city. And I thought, oh, man, what have I done? It must be a good one. And then you and I had that conversation, and I vividly, apart from the fact that I really appreciated the opportunity in such a well-respected organisation to this day. And I just said, give me the ball, James, and I'll show you how far I can run with it.
Yeah.
And I had a fantastic experience at Kell Rigby. And in fact, anyone that I ever meet to this day that worked at Kell Rigby, you say, hey, if Kell Rigby kicked off again next week, would you go back? And they all say, without a heartbeat, yes.
Yeah.
So it was a great culture.
That's nice to hear.
Great culture. They were the days. And but yeah, going back to Apple. So Apple was do you want to tell us a little bit about Apple as a client for the business?
Yeah, so at the time, Apple was looking to build their first store in Australia, and we had an amazing executive in the marketing side of things, Evan Leslie, and he just and we had a great site team, really. Michael and so we put the best possible proposal together. And Apple, who were not looking for the cheapest price, they said, it's that old thing, that old saw, time, cost, quality, pick any two. And Apple said, well, if we're going to pick two, it's going to be time and quality. That means cost is negotiable. And they said, make sure you charge enough, because we're a difficult client. And that was John Hilligus from Apple. He was brilliant.
Right.
Anyway, you and I were, I think Rob Long, we were talking
Yeah, we
to.
were at the time sort of exploring the social psychology side of things.
Yeah.
And,
there's some pretty kind of wacky stuff at the time, but then it sounded wacky, but then if you break it down, it's like, hold on a second, why are we not doing this? And so that's why we piloted it at Apple. We actually suggested it to Apple. And when you suggest anything innovative to a company like Apple, they're generally going to be okay with it. I mean, that's their DNA. And so we trialled it, and it worked really well.
I think my recollection of it on that project, the way we approached, positive, rewarding positive behaviours. My recollection on that project was just smiles. I can hear laughter at all the draws where the monthly draws with the barbecue, and I think the camera was rolling around, and I can remember some of the subcontractors at the time turning up at other projects saying, is this one of those jobs like the Apple job? You know,
Yeah, exactly.
which was incredible. But so that was our sort of first foray in exploring alternatives to this whole punitive approach that I think construction is.
Yeah, exactly.
When it comes to safety and risk.
Yeah, where the most you could ever hope for is zero. You know, and Rob Long said that. Like, if you've got a system, because zero lost time injuries was the sort of the gold standard. If you've got a system where zero is the most you can hope for, then it's not all that motivating. You know?
Well, he actually wrote. I think he wrote a book. I know he wrote a book on zero harm, and if anyone hasn't read that, pick it up, and you'll get through the first 3 or 4 pages and realise that it was just a safety mantra at the time. That everyone was sort of brainwashed, and then when organisations couldn't achieve that utopia sort of target. It really affected the culture in the workplace, because it was this underlying culture of, well, we're not really hitting our targets, but we chant from the top of the floors every day of the week about how good we're operating, and in fact we're not. We're actually hiding things. And in fact, I was talking to Fiona from Men's Services yesterday, and the LTI thing came up, and I think that's as topical as zero harm in the fact that it's just a poor measurement. But culturally, the damage that it does by putting pressure on a business to have absolutely zero accidents. I mean, if we could do that, we'd probably wouldn't be in the construction industry. We'd be smarter paid people somewhere, perhaps in space. I don't know. So the time at Kell Rigby, I guess we faced our fair share of risk. I think with the Apple store, one of the recollections I have was when they said, "Hey Garry, we've got 3.5 ton panels of glass coming at night in George Street, and we need to block the street off, and we need the biggest cranes that we've got in town to lift these glass panels up, but it'll all be okay, right? Just relax, Garry."
That's right.
And I can remember the day saying to one of the project managers on the day, I saw him in the office and I said, "Hey, are we still good tonight? I'm going to come out to the job." And he said, yeah, we're good, Garry. And I said, okay. And I just didn't feel he said that right. And I said, so have we coordinated this? And I sort of got a mixed response. And I said, how about I come out a bit earlier? And we have a bit of a team meeting with the contractors. So we met at the Apple store at maybe 6 o'clock at night. The street's starting to get blocked off. It's raining. It's now dark. And we're waiting for these trucks to arrive with all the gear. And so I've got the traffic controllers, scaffolders, and every other trade you can imagine on the day. And I learnt real quickly that no one was coordinating or consulting on anything.
Right.
And my analogy to the guys in the room on that day, and it was probably through panic through myself, because I could see that this was unfolding to be a disaster, because the store had to be trading at 8 o'clock the next morning. And my recollection was, I said, hey guys, this is like robbing a bank. We're either going to get the money or we're going to get caught. And I think everyone in the room went, you know what, gotcha. And we need to start coordinating this really quickly. And of course it went like clockwork. And it was fantastic, and it was it was all filmed, and it was an impressive thing, seeing glass panels spinning around in the middle of George Street and building something cool.
So that happened at the same time that we were trialling this this positive performance thing. Why did that happen on a job that was supposed to be a positive performance trial? What do you think caused that? And maybe we should sort of take it back a step, because we're automatically assuming that people understand what this positive performance is.
Okay.
I wonder if it's worth sort of describing that and then answering that question, because that's a counterpoint, really, to positive performance.
So I think it originated when we were talking to a guy called Mike Corrett, who had said that he'd worked overseas with some, he come from a psychology background and was looking at stuff in regard to risk and where positive approaches can apply as a punitive approach. And those conversations really manifested in a way that we could see real quickly when we sat around the table and open honest discussion about, the industry is just plagued with smash the subby, non-conformance, program, etc. And then you've got workers on a project that say, I do all this good stuff, but you seem to catch me out every time I'm doing something wrong in regards to safety or risk. And we just thought at the time to reward positive behaviours just seemed to be the aha moment for us, because it was an industry that was a tough industry, really tough industry, long hours, programs are just, almost unachievable to some degree.
Yeah.
And then we're just, really riding the contractors to deliver, right?
Yeah.
I think when Kell and Rigby looked at it and you and I looked at it as a positive approach, it just seemed like an obvious thing for us to do. And I related it at the time. I had two young children, and I know for them to clean up their bedroom and get them to the park earlier so we could kick the ball around. If I threw in a little bit of positive in terms of, hey, if we can clean the bedroom and get this done, we're at the park earlier and may even give us time for an ice cream. And as opposed to walking in and smacking your children and saying your room's not tidy. That's how I saw it. I related it to my kids.
And where the industry is all about smacking. Like everything in the industry is about the strap. Really. Financial or otherwise.
And and especially so in safety. So
right.
You have that lost time injury, and you're the worst guy on the job site. Because you've just blown the mantra.
Right. So safety in the construction industry was, and kind of probably still is to a degree, all punitive. It's all negative. So if you do that, then I will punish you with a notice or with financially or something like that. And I think this comes around to what we were playing with at Apple, right? Where I don't know if Rob Long could be characterised as on the fringe, but he had an idea that was certainly on the fringe. And we thought it was brilliant if it could be kind of tested. And it was quite simply, so if we've got if we mammals have two toolkits, the carrot and the stick, and we were in the car on the way here, I was talking to my sister this morning, and she was talking about a school teacher, aka street psychologist's version of events. And same deal.
Absolutely.
Carrot and stick. So if we mammals work to carrots and sticks, and the construction industry is the master of the stick, and there's no real carrot, particularly in safety, then why don't we just try something in that direction, right?
Particularly in safety, because we attribute so heavily culture and safety. So, of course, with a punitive approach, constantly there's this downward pressure on your culture, no matter how many slogans and programs you run. Right? It's interesting you mentioned school teachers. School teachers are people that care about kids. School teachers, they go and study and they get a degree, and they learn so much about teaching and influence than any safety professional in construction. Obviously, a nurse is a caring person. A nurse, nursing people have just bucket loads of empathy and emotional intelligence. And don't feel that hitting someone in the bed that's actually not feeling too well because they shat the bed is the right approach. And
that's right. They're dealing with real people every day. In a funny sort of way, they're more qualified than
the qualified.
Right? Because those qualified are dealing with the very edge cases, whereas teachers and nurses are dealing with the fat part of the bell curve, like everyone else, and their daily issues. And so I think there's a lot to be said for that wisdom that comes from working in those industries. You know?
Yeah, so there has been evidence where government in Australia have looked at incentive programs for roads. Right, roads are one of the biggest killers. Right, so they looked at if you had no infringements for the year, you get a reduction in your fee for the year or whatever it may be. And when that happened, I actually thought, wow, that's a real shift from, hey, it's double to merit points this week. You're all going to be in the naughty basket. So and governments, I think they've got a lot to explore. But my question would be more around, why do we think that construction continues to think downward pressure and the punitive approach around safety is the only method to use?
I don't know. Is it as simple as it's what we've always done? Or is it, I know it's a whole nother hornet's nest of male-female thing, but is it the fact that construction industry is traditionally so male-dominated in its culture that there's something to do with that? And I don't know.
Is it more around? I think there's also, when I think about the builder, I don't think of the builder in isolation. I think about the ecosystem being the client, the investors, etc., who all have a hand, particularly now in all this updated legislation where everyone's deemed somewhat responsible. So I think pressure from clients and the broader stakeholders brings a level of, we've just got to do this right, otherwise this is what we do.
True. And it could be even like incarceration in the States, right? It just becomes this reinforcing cycle where I think I read recently that the Americans have 5% of the world's population roughly and 25% of the inmates, right? So something's wrong there. And so perhaps there's something to do with that versus you look at incarceration in, say, Norway or something like that, and they take a totally different approach. And they can have their cake and eat it. So they don't have the huge cost of incarceration. They don't have that recidivism that happens in the States. Like, there's all these things that the Norwegians have figured out that the Americans, God love them, still haven't. So I wonder if that is something similar to what's happening in the construction industry with punishment. Is it simply that's what it knows, and then a safety issue happens, more punishment must be the answer. And I think it's worth pointing out that when we trialled this system at Apple, we weren't trying to dismantle the system of punishment.
Correct.
We were simply trying to augment it.
Correct.
So it's not about, this is not a revolution. This is not talking about our existing system's wrong and everything else, because there's a lot that's right with it, actually. It's just that it's only half of the picture, that's all. Yeah,
totally agree. And to enhance any systems or structure that an organisation has in place, even in a drip form, I think can make such a difference. I was thinking then about, there'd be a lot of people listening right now that think, our organisation does reward safety. We have the Golden Hard Hat month and and I would challenge that. I've seen it in a lot of organisations that I've worked that it's tokenism. It's literally running around going, who do we give the Golden Hard Hat to this month, because we forgot about it and it's got to be out by 4 o'clock. So
what we trialled, and inspired by Mick Corrett and those guys, was when you do something well on site, and it could be productivity, could be safety. It's more about safety than anything else. Could be site vibes, like quality. So anything in that sense. On the Apple site, we printed out, 500 or so scratchies. You get given a scratchy, literally, and it's
like an instant scratchy card.
Kell Rigby instant scratchy. You scratch it, and you've won 5, 10, 20, or $50 or something like that on the spot. And so it's like, well done. I think it was said, well done, legend, or well done, champion, or something like that. And then that goes into a hat which gets chosen at the end of each month. And there's $500, I think it was, on that site. Somebody wins $500. And so, and we did a little video of it just to sort of...
I think it's on YouTube still.
Right, yeah. And so we were trialling that. And it's hard to say, we didn't measure it empirically, so it's all anecdotal, but it felt right. That's all I can say.
It felt right.
Yeah.
Clients, I know. You mentioned Evan Leslie. I remember Evan calling me one day from Brisbane when he ran the Brisbane office, saying, "Hey, we've just jagged a really cool job up here. We got down to the final 3, and then we put our innovation across the table in regard to safety and risk, and the client just hit the floor and said, 'You guys are it.'"
That's true too. That's like a important side benefit of
because it's a point of difference. It's showing that we don't have a bigger stick than the other builder.
Anyway, and then fast forward 10 years, you and I keep in fairly regular contact. I think every time I come to Australia, we catch up for coffee, and then that's probably about it, I guess, over 10 years. And then we're like, we've got to do this. Both you and I said, we've got to do it. And so that was probably this time last year.
We haven't let it go.
Haven't let it go.
Yeah.
Got to do it. So we're like, okay. And we had a method to doing it. We had all the maths. We had everything we've learnt from the previous one.
Yeah.
We're like, right, let's get these cards printed out and everything. And then we were like, hold on a second. What? There's this thing called an iPhone. Why don't we make an app?
Why don't we connect it to the fax?
Yeah, the fax machine, exactly. And so it's funny because I think a lot of app ideas now are solutions looking for a problem. Whereas this genuinely was the other way around. It was old school.
Yeah.
It was like, we have this thing, we've tested it, and doing an app is so much easier in every sense. Yeah. So that's what we're testing, right?
Yeah, and it's exciting. It's an exciting time, and I think we're both passionate, genuinely, about this whole topic. Yeah. And we've discussed it for year on year on year. And
promoting positivity in the industry generally. That's a good feeling, frankly. If we can do something that does something positive in the industry.
Well, there won't be a person on a building site that says, "No, I'm not interested in being rewarded. Just give me another non-conformance, please."
So hopefully that does, because God knows I've seen what the hard part of the industry looks like. So if there's something that can be done to help
absolutely
out, it's a good thing.
So watch this space there.
Yeah.
So what's on the short term or the medium term for James at the moment? What are you doing?
So I'm in Canberra, and I'm doing some postgrad study to sort of help Australia in a funny sort of way. And I've got a sailing adventure business in the Virgin Islands that I run remotely.
Yeah. And how's the business there going?
It's going well. It was sort of we pressed pause during COVID, and we're back to probably about half of what we were just before COVID.
Right.
And it's just picking itself back up.
So I've never known this. Was sailing a big thing for you when you were young, or was it something? Right. So it's something you took on later.
Well, we did it as kids with mum and dad, my 3 sisters in New Zealand.
Right.
When I was like a teenager, on holidays, and we'd go to Paihia in northern New Zealand, and they'd say to Dad, we'd charter a boat, and they'd say to Dad, have you sailed before? And Dad's like, not really.
I'll work it out.
Hobie cats a couple of times, that's about it. And being in New Zealand, they're like, oh, it's not that hard. Let me show you for an hour or two, and you'll figure it out. And so it was very like that.
Right.
And we sort of just did it, and then in 2012, I doubled down on sailing. I needed to sort of empty my head. It was a lot. There was a lot of guilt that I felt at the time, and all sorts of other things that weren't healthy in any way. And so sailed across an ocean just to sort of press the reset button. Just like Control Alt Delete.
Yeah.
And not to forget the lessons, but rather to get in a healthier state of mind.
Right. And photography? You're still passionate about photography?
Yeah, so I crossed with a camera, basically.
Right.
And so just concentrated on that for a few years, and was thinking about making a go of it as a photographer, because that was my passion. And full respect to photographers. I don't know how they do it. I think photography is a little bit like golf, in that if you're top 100 in the world, you earn really good money. And then there's a lot of other people that do it for the love.
Yeah.
I might not be entirely correct there, but I certainly couldn't see it being financial. I was not one of those top 100.
Wow.
And so, after a couple of years of that, it wasn't all bad. After a couple of years of that, I saw an opportunity in sailing and was able to use my photos to sort of start the business, really.
Right.
Because it's a very graphical kind of industry.
Yeah.
And so that's been really good. We look after people in their sort of mid-20s to late 30s, Americans. We take them for a week, and it's adventure sailing. So they also learn to sail.
So schools get involved?
No, it's mostly individuals.
Right. Okay.
You might be a sort of a 28-year-old lawyer in New York City. You earn pretty good money. You're adventurous, but you're stuck in this cubicle, and you want to get out and sort of do something for a week. And the Caribbean, for someone in New York, it's 4.5 hours direct flight.
Yeah, right.
And so for them, it's a great week. We wake up, we do Wim Hof breathing, we do meditation, then we get into like some sailing theory. Do sailing and then do some adventure. So it might be climbing an island in Dominica, or it might be freediving in Sabre Island or something like that.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so it's really, really good week, and it's been enjoyable as a business. That's
Absolutely.
For sure. And it's interesting running it remotely. It's I've never done it before, and so so far so good.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, look, James, thank you for coming in today and chatting about all things safety, risk, reward.
Pleasure.
And it's been great to catch up with you again.
Yeah.
And I look forward to catching up with you shortly and hearing more about the other side of things with the incentive programs.
Great.
Thanks, James.
Garry. No worries.
Cheers, mate.
Okay.
So I hope you enjoyed it. Be nice to catch up again soon. Cheers.